On the 21st day of Christmas, my true love gave to me the belief that one day you will be happy. This does not have a sing-song at the beginning. This does not have an intro, because if you clicked on this because of the title, and if you need this, you do not need to hear me do a daily check-in and talk to you about my life. You're possibly just looking for something to hold on to, something to remind you that things are going to be okay, a little spark of hope, something that reminds you that you should be here and you should stay and that things are going to be okay, something that you already kind of know deep down and you want to hold on to, but maybe you've lost sight of it or you lose sight of it sometimes. So let me tell you a story. 2019 was without a doubt the lowest point in my life. I was living in New Zealand in an apartment with my boyfriend at the time and his brother and his brother's girlfriend. I felt really isolated. We had just moved to a new town and I didn't know anybody apart from them. Our relationship was not good. I hated my job. I didn't even have enough money to pay my share of the rent. And so I felt very dependent on everyone else. It was winter, it was dark, it was cold, and I was just fucking miserable. Everything felt hopeless. I knew that this wasn't how I wanted to live my life, but I didn't know how I wanted to live my life. And so I continued existing like this. And the longer I did it, the deeper and deeper and deeper I got into hopelessness, despair, what I look at now as almost situational depression, but at the time it felt like chronic, debilitating depression. It was the first and only time in my life where I had experienced panic attacks. And although I didn't really know that that was what it was, I just remember every time everyone left the house, I would have these kind of panic moments where I would pace around the house, no idea what to do. I just felt frantic. I felt like I needed something. I think I just felt so isolated and disconnected from everything, from myself, from desire, from hope, from joy, from my friends, family, everything. It felt like this kind of primal need to be seen and loved. All I wanted was just to be held and loved and told everything is going to be fine, like you're okay. And I just didn't have that. I knew deep down that I didn't want my life to end. I just wanted those feelings to end. But I didn't really see a way for that happening. And I couldn't imagine a life in that moment where I could feel okay. I couldn't imagine a life where I didn't feel that kind of debilitating hopelessness, despair, that kind of grey cloud over everything that I did. I remember very, very vividly sitting on a rock. It was nighttime. I'd gone out of the house by myself in some sort of desire to be alone, because I think the thing about depression and feeling hopelessness is you want more than anything to be seen and to be loved and held. But it's also, it feels humiliating to need help. And so you push everyone away, or at least I did. And you push everyone away. You don't want anyone to see you and witness you in this kind of horrifying feeling. But what you need and want more than anything is people to want you and love you and care for you in that moment. And I remember leaving my house. I sit by the side of the main road on this big rock. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the road. And all I'm thinking is, it's really a shame that I'm not going to see my 23rd birthday. I'm 22 at the time. And I think it's a shame that I'm not going to turn 23. Because I just couldn't see a way that I could continue living like this. The idea of living an entire life like this was just unthinkable. And I don't know what made me keep going and continue going and kind of seek solutions, but something did. And so somehow I managed to figure out, okay, what do I actually, like, what do I need? Because you have to keep living as well, you know, like you have this kind of debilitating sadness that takes over your whole life. But then you also have to keep living. You have to keep working. You have to keep making dinners. You have to keep making money. All of the kind of life things that you don't really have the privilege to kind of let go of, regardless of how you feel. And so I asked myself, what would be the path of least resistance? How can I just surrender everything and just focus on feeling better. So I flew home from New Zealand back to England. I moved in with my mum, which was a huge ego wounding experience for me because at 22 I felt invincible and independent and I didn't want to let go of that. But I read How to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, and he talks about in his bouts of depression, he moved back to home at 30 years old. And that story and his story of how he kind of just surrendered everything and went home, moved back in with his parents, even though he was in his 30s. And it wasn't the natural path. And every part of him was like, this is a failure. He did what he had to do for himself. And that really inspired me. And that book kept me alive, I think. And I flew home and things got better. Things did get better. I didn't know in the moment that they could. I didn't realize that was really an option. And I couldn't really see that as an option, but they did get better. And I couldn't imagine in that moment life feeling fine and feeling fun and feeling like hopeful and purposeful again. I couldn't really imagine anything apart from this kind of, at the end of movie credits, where there's the big sunset and this enormous road and it looks like the road is kind of infinite. It's going into the abyss. That's kind of what my life felt like. Looking at my life, looking at the life ahead of me, kind of felt like that. It felt like, God, there is this abyss that I have to show up to every single day for what felt like infinity, like 90 years. Like, I don't want to do this for 90 years. I couldn't imagine looking at that abyss and thinking, wow, I get to do this for 90 years rather than that I have to do this for 90 years. But things did get better. And since then, I have visited 8 different countries. I have visited another continent. I met my best friend, whom at the time I didn't even know existed. We've lived together in Mexico. We've lived together in Portugal. Made some of the best memories of my life with her. I didn't even know she existed at that time. I started a business. I've made more money than I ever had and I ever really imagined being possible, especially from doing my own business, which was something I think I always imagined myself doing. Because I didn't give it all up at 22, I am becoming an auntie next February. And because I didn't give it up at 22, I have read so many incredible books and I have been to yoga classes that have brought me to tears. And I have had coffee dates with my mum. Like, what a special thing to kind of enter adulthood and be able to treat your mum as a friend. I didn't give it all up at 22, so I managed to do that. I visited New York City and I've been to concerts on festivals all around the world. I've lived with my twin sister in our own apartment in our hometown, which I never thought was possible, but was something that I'm going to cherish forever. I watched my dad get 3 insane Labrador puppies. I've watched our family pug nearly die, but then get better and still continue to live his best life, even to this day. I have gone to my favorite vegan cafe and got countless different cakes and coffee combinations, the cafe of which I didn't even know of at 22, but because I stayed, I managed to do that, and that is one of the small joys of my life. So many big and small things I have experienced in the last 5 years because I didn't give it up. And when you're in it, I know it feels like my situation is different. You hear stories of people overcoming depression and overcoming hard times, and you think that's great for you, but I'm different. My situation is different. You had this and I don't have that. You think it's different. And people say it'll get better. And you think, how do you know? Like, how do you know it's going to get better for me? Because you don't know my situation. And what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't get better? Because surely it doesn't get better for everyone. You see stories of people having depression until the day that they die and they end their lives because of depression. What if that's me? What if that is my story? Not everyone gets better, but life is long. And when I was in that, when I thought, what if I'm not the one who's different? What if I am the one who this is my life? Every day molded into each other, and it became this just kind of amalgamated mess where there was just no point in remaining in it anymore. And it felt so debilitating. It felt endless, boundless, and it just felt like it would never end. But now I'm out of it. I can see how short it really was. And I think sometimes we just have to endure. You have to endure and you have to sit in it, and you just have to not let it defeat you, because the only way it defeats you is if you leave. And You just can't see that as an option. Now I can see that life is just made of a series of phases, some longer than others, but it's all phases. And you never know how close you are to the next phase and how much better the next phase could be. In November of 2019, I thought I was going to give it all up. In January of 2019, I had started a business. I was moving back to New Zealand, and I felt more hope and purpose then than I had probably in the 5 years prior. You have no idea how close you are to the next phase and how bountiful, how plentiful, how different that phase could be to the phase that you're in now. I know people plagued with family members who have decided to leave. My best friend in secondary schools, her younger sister ended her own life at 17 years old. The little girl who I remember used to come into the kitchen and annoy us while we were trying to bake cakes, while we're doing our makeup to get ready for prom, and she just wanted to be involved and we would shout at her to get out of the room. She left at 17, and I think about it more than I care to admit how much I wish I could just tell her to just wait, just see it through, endure these periods, do what you have to do to endure and get through them, because things do get better. And that's not very profound, I know that, but that's life, and life can be hard, and sometimes you have to endure, but you have no idea the things that you might see and experience and love and laugh and just live in if you just keep going and decide to endure, decide to just stay. There's so much to see, there's so much to do, life is so long, so you just have to stay. Love you so much. Stay.